Welcome, guys, to this week's episode of Heavy Metal Tones with me, your host, Tony Evans. I hope you've had a good week. It's just come and gone. It's spring here in Canberra. It's a beautiful day. It's been a beautiful week, actually. I love it when the warm weather comes in. I get more creative. I can exercise more. Life in general is just good, right? Everyone likes the warm weather. Well, most of us do anyway. Now, thank you for, again, just want to say thank you for reaching out to me, those that did, from last week's episode, because I did let go of some things that were a little bit more personal. I think it's just my way of using it as therapy. I thank you for listening and for caring and reaching out and asking how I'm going and holding in there. And that album did it to me. It still does it to me. I have to be careful when I do listen to it because a lot of Steven Wilson's music is very personal, and it does tend to take you down rabbit holes. It does me anyway. So, anyway, thank you very much for listening and for reaching out and saying how much you love the show. I really appreciate that. I really do. Now, this week's one came about by happenstance, which is the best way, isn't it, right? You can come by bus, but I open to come by happenstance. Anywho. Yes, so what happened was I was, on my normal record buying moment on the weekend, which I like to do. And I came across, just in the local record store, and picked up not a new copy because it was brand new when I bought it, but it was released about 4 or 5 years ago. It's the Tommy Deluxe Edition Tri-Gatefold print, and very interesting because it's like side 1 and side 4, and then 2 and 3 on the other one. It's like designed is to copy the stacking system that stereos used to have. I bought it and put it on. Now, I've got Tommy already. I've got the soundtrack. I've got the Philharmonic version. I've also got the mono print of this album. And it's the one I've spent most of my time, to be fair, listening to. So I'm sort of, when I put it on and sort of sat back, as I like to do, lights off, headphones on, quietly on my own, it blew my mind. It really, really blew my mind. I forgot how really good this album is. But what really blew, it's not the music. I mean, I know the music inside and out. The music is fantastic. What it was the stereo mix. The separation in this mix it just really opened up a whole new vista to me of this particular album. And then it got me thinking. It got me thinking about retro. Like, we're all retrofitting our stereo systems now, most of us, okay? When I say most of us, I've always been a record player and cassette man, but people are going back to the analog systems as record sales. As I mentioned a few episodes back about record sales, bursting the seams, but they're not retrofitting how we listen to it, which is really, really interesting, I think, because what we've done is we're cherry picking what we want. And that's why I think, as I said, I'm going to call this episode is called "Is Stereo Dead?" Which is really, it's a very harsh thing to say, right? I don't think stereo as such is dead. It's what it means, how it is listened to, and why we have it that I think is misunderstood now by the modern listeners. And I don't mean men of my age, women of my age, whatever gender you are of our age. Whatever you identify as of our age, and I'm talking about 50 plus here, we've all grown up, most of the majority of us, with family members, i.e. dads, uncles, brothers, sisters, who were really into stereo and what Hi-Fi magazine, and when you bought a record home and put it on your record deck, you listened to it in a way that I don't think people listen to their music now. And what I mean by that is, so myself, as you probably know, as I've mentioned it before on my shows, and if you don't know, I'll repeat it. I have a really beautiful Rager Planner 3 record deck that I got for my 50th birthday from my lovely wife. I have a fantastic reconditioned Marantz tape deck that I reconditioned. I also bought these 2 beautiful Marantz speakers, which I reconditioned as well. And I've got a fantastic modern, it's still fantastic, Marantz amplifier, but also I have a Yamaha CD player. And the thing about it is, I've got it in quadraphonic sound, but it's not designed to play in quadraphonic. It just means I have 4 speakers. It just means I play through 4 speakers. It's sort of fake quadraphonic. Now, the point about that is that when I put my record player, like a record on the deck, and I play it, if it's not through my headphones, it's through my speaker system. And if it's my speaker system, genuinely, I sit in front of it, in between, and get a stereo sound coming through, right? Now, that stereo sound, and we'll go into that in the second half about stereo, but this is just where I'm thinking at the moment. I just had some thoughts, right? That stereo sound is was by the band, particularly by the bands of the 60s and 70s, The Who, the Beatles, the Beach Boys, the Rolling Stones, Yes, Genesis, all those sort of bands. They basically, when they went to mix the album and to produce the album, they were thinking about textures within the sound wall, right? They were thinking about, where do I put this musician? Where does this one come through? How are our listeners going to reproduce this, right? And they wanted, what they basically were trying to give you was the band in your living room. And do you remember when CDs first came out, they said, oh, it's so good, it's like having the band in your living room. Well, it did, because then when CDs were first released, you listened to it with 2 to 4 speakers. And so they were basically just copying the analog onto digital for most of the first early CD releases. And so you sat there and, like a good example here, there's a track on. So let me just read what I wrote. So I wrote this morning. I'm in my morning walk, and I just sort of thought about, okay, what did I write here? Here we go. Okay, so Keith Moon. This is the Who's Tommy, right? Keith Moon is pushed into the left side of the ear, and Pete into the right, where John's bass sort of fills the whole wall of sound, and then and occasionally is panned from left to right, with Pete's guitar. Sorry, with Roger's vocal almost sort of sitting, interestingly in front, but not blocking any of the audio passages. And this isn't for the whole of the album. It's a masterclass, in my opinion, of stereo reproduction. But occasionally, Pete will move to the left ear. Keith Moon will be in both ears. Then it might just be hi-hats in one, cymbals in the other, and somehow the bass behind you. It's a miracle of audio separation. Now, again, a good record deck will pick that up, but a good set of speakers will always pick it up as well if it's a stereo system. Right? Now, there's a passage there's a track on Tommy called Christmas, and I've written this here. Can you imagine missing the delicious mix of Christmas with Keith in the left, John in the right, Pete pushing both ears, and Roger sitting in front, right? Because basically what they were trying to do is say, hey, you can't come to the show, we're going to bring the show to you, right? That's what the album was about then. That's what it was about. Now, what's happening, I think, is that we now sit. I've got one. I'll be honest, I'm going to put this a caveat here. We've all got a Bluetooth speaker of some kind, right? Whether it be a Sonos Spa, whether it would be a Sonos Cube, whatever, the shower stereo, whatever. We've all got one. Now, for me, they're very good for the intermediate sound. Like I don't like to have silence in my life. It's a bit of an ADHD thing of mine. I like music or talking all the time. It just helps me fill the spaces in my head. And those that know me will know I never shut up, right? That's probably why. And so I will have a portable speaker in the kitchen, maybe, that's playing from my phone, right? But I know that I'm not listening to that as the way I would listen to it if I was in my music room. Listen to me, la-di-da, music room. You know what I mean? Or if I was in my stereo or at a concert or whatever. I'm consuming it as background noise. I'm not using it as a means of. I don't sit there and want to absorb it and take it in. But I think what's happening is that we're selling these retrofitted, back to retrofitting, we're retrofitting our stereo systems to high-end record players, but we're not retrofitting them to good amplifiers and good speakers, and we're just not doing that. So are we losing the benefit of retrofitting to a record? Because the thing about records, as I said before, is the separation on it, and the warmth, and the intimacy is what you want from it. With CDs, whether you like it or not, are a cold medium for me. They're just so 80s, 90s. They're perfunctory. They're like McDonald's. They're here to fill you up. You don't really feel good afterwards, right? You don't feel full for long, and that's the CD for me. So I'm not saying that people who love CDs are wrong, because that's your choice, the way you consume music, and no problem at all is how you take it in. But what I'm saying is, people are spending now more and more money on record players and tape decks, and even though the tape decks they're buying are awful. I've discussed this before on the podcast, but record decks, no, so not so much. If you avoid the horrible flea market record decks and some of those terrible, low-end mechanisms, you're going to get yourself a decent record deck, even if you buy one second hand. Reconditioned. I mean, most of the time it just needs a new belt, right? Once you get that, and maybe an updated stylus, away you go. You've got a beautiful way of reproducing this music. Now, bands in the 60s and 70s, they spent a lot of time, a lot of effort reproducing this music. Now, whether it's on a CD or whether it's on your vinyl, it's still coming out as a stereo mix. So when I say stereo, for people out there who don't know what stereo is, and I'm sure you all do, it just means two channels or more than one channel. Okay, so you're getting it in both ears. Now you might say, Tony, but I get it in both ears all the time. Isn't everything stereo? No, not everything is stereo, and we'll talk about that when we come back in the second half, because I will talk about the brief chat about the history of stereo and where we're going and what's happening with it and where did it come from. I won't go bore you with all the technical details, because I read that a scientific manual on stereo last week, and it honestly, my brain almost fried. So I've just sort of grabbed bits and pieces of what I from it. But I would love to know how you reproduce your music. It's different when it's on your headphones. Now, people listen up. I mean this. When you put on a good expensive pair of headphones, and I've got some beautiful Sonys that I use, and I've also got some Sennheiser that I use. Sennheiser over ear and in ear. I've got one for each type of activity. I tend to like in ear directly to my phone for traveling, because they don't battery doesn't die, right? You know what I mean? You haven't got to charge them. With those, yes, you're going to get the separation because you've got two speakers directly on your ears. So the stereo mix is going to come through beautifully in that respect. I'm talking about sitting in a open environment, in a room listening to your music, or in your house or your kitchen or wherever you are. Because I could be wrong. Now, I listen to a lot of varied music, as you know. A lot of heavy metal is not beautifully stereo mixed. Okay, it is not nuanced, but it doesn't need to be. Okay, so like for instance, one of the best sort of mono deluxe kind of releases ever is the Sex Pistols' "God Save Never Mind the Bollocks." It is basically, as the producer said in an interview, it's mono deluxe. It's basically both channels the same, loud, heavy and fast. And that's because people like the Pistols and the punk movement, and later on some of the heavy metal movement as well, they were moving away from the expensive, clever, time-consuming production values that say, like the Pistol, like the Beatles and Deep Purple and Badfinger and Yes and Genesis, all those big bands were doing, right? Beach Boys and so on, like Pet Sounds and Sgt. Pepper and the White Album. They were getting away from that because they didn't want to. They wanted to bring rock and roll back to It's very raw basis, and that's why you get that. Now, that I don't mind, because that's produced that way. They're not saying, hey, we're high fidelity. They're saying we're high speed, we're high octane, we're drug-fueled madness, all right? That's fine, because that's what you expect from that, so all good. But I think modern, and I could be wrong here, now please do get, don't hesitate to chime in here, but I think pop music, and I'm going to use pop as a very broad spectrum, I don't believe that pop music is beautifully stereo mixed. And that's because generally because I think the Gen Zs and the Gen whatever they are, they're consuming music in a different way. They're not sitting down in rooms and listening to music like we would have done. They're walking around with their headphones in their iPhones and their phones in general. They're at raves. They're at I'm going to say discos and age myself there. They're at parties and so on, which again, it's just background music, right? I don't think anyone's sitting around and genuinely contemplating the nuances of Smack My Bitch Up. You know what I mean? Or even anything by Beyonce or whoever, right? They're just not doing that, are they? They're just enjoying the music, which is what it's there for. I'm not denying it's what it's there for, but this isn't about that. I think what I'm trying to say is that stereo, I think, is dead because of a generation of people, myself and you included, my age and maybe a little bit older, and I'm just a bit younger. We're coming, we're a bit of a dying breed, right? So we unless we pass this knowledge on and give the listeners more opportunity to play their music in a more, in the way we enjoy it, it's never going to be a viable thing, right? So I mean, it sounds like an old man going, "Oh, it was better in my day," but I don't. That's the case. As I said, we're now going backwards with the way that we produce and listen to music. Why aren't we doing that in the way that we are genuinely listening to it? Because I can't imagine anything worse than putting on a beautiful, complex piece of music like the White Album or Pet Sounds or, Deep Purple's In Rock or even something like Thin Lizzy's Black Rose, and it being flat and featureless and non-directional at me from a cold mono, a single speaker, Bluetooth speaker. I know that there's lots of technology out there. I know that there is lots of technology out there where they can reproduce stereo sound from a single source, but is it really the same? It might reach your ears very similarly, right? But is it the same? I really don't, and doubt that heavily. I really do. I think it's just trickery, and it's not true stereo. Anyway, it's my moan over this side. I'm going to stop now, and we'll come back on the other side and chat about stereo and exactly, its sort of origins, and where we go from there. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed that. I really enjoyed thinking about it. Talking to the other side, guys. Bye for now. Welcome back to part 2, guys. Thanks for going back to me, and I hope you enjoyed the first side. I really did enjoy the first part of the show. Now, I just want to reiterate, not all of us are audiophiles, okay? Not all of us are like you, me, and everyone who listens to this show, because a lot of consumers of music are, as the terminology is, consumers of music. It is an entertainment form after all. But are we letting them down? Are we letting our listeners down and the listener down by not allowing them to fully hear what the band wants them to hear? Do you not think? Do you not think that? I'm a prime example. I've listened to the Tommies, the Tommy, for years, since I think I first heard it when I was about 6 or 7, and I've listened to it on many stereos in my life. I've listened on tape, I've listened to it on CD, I've listened to it on vinyl, I've listened on download, I've seen some of it live, and most of the time I've somehow missed the beauty of the stereo mix that the producers and the band put together. Now, I think it's because we're also thinking about it again, retrospectively. Bands were given time. A long time ago, bands were given time, given money, given time, and they were like, here you go. Usually the first album's quite rushed, isn't it? Make your money, then get in there and then make some classic albums. And, they generally then can spread their wings a bit because they've got a bit more money behind them, the label is backing them, they give them a better studio, they've got a better producer, they've got a better everything, right? Better instruments, and really, more importantly, more time. And how many times have you heard a band like Iron Maiden, classic example, saying they don't like the first album, he isn't a big fan of the sound because it's too thin, because it was rushed. Same with Marillion's Fugazi, I mentioned to you, that it was rushed, so it sounded unfinished and not correct, right? That's because the band knows what they're trying to give. They know, particularly in rock and roll, they're really looking for depth and thickness of sound and quality of sound and something different, always something different. But I think with the new age of music, it is all push, digital, get it out quickly, click this track to that track, done. All right? It doesn't seem to me that they spend a lot of time on the finished product, a lot of the times. And I'm not saying that's everyone, because that would be an absolute, bullshit for me to say that. But what I'm saying is that I think that's one of the reasons why that we're missing, and why we're not given the opportunity to buy good reproduction equipment that for relatively good prices. As I mentioned before, my uncle, not my father never liked music, but my uncle and my brothers, they were really into their hi-fis and read Hi-Fi magazine and they'd Choice magazine, and they'd spend ages setting it all up, and it was very much a precisely sort of scientific way of producing the music to get the best out of it. And that's what they were trying to do, squeeze every ounce of the best out of it, right? Because their ears were trained. They were trained for that. They were looking for those different sound separations. It's like enjoying good wine and good food, and understanding the flavors, fine whiskies and notes and top notes and bottom notes and finishes and after finishes. This is what the same with music. Coffee is another thing. People love coffee. They make the same comment, don't they? Right? It's all about enjoying more depth. And is it always about intellectualizing the music? No, it's not. But it is about understanding the music in everything it's been aimed at you, the way it's directed at you. Anyway, I'll just get off that soapbox. All right. So what I basically want to talk about now is how we used to consume music. So originally, when we had a record player on 78 on shellac discs, although the wax discs, apparently they did try a vertical and horizontal sounds on them to get a stereo reproduction, because stereo has been around since 1888. First shown at the Paris Electronic Fair, where they basically put two telephonic speakers, so two telephones speakers either side of the stage, and played it at the audience from a live production of a piece of classical music. So it has been going around a long time, the concept of trying to get the sound to sound naturally in both ears. This was a hard thing to do and took a lot of effort. Now, most of the time they would have the trumpet, the wax disc, or the wax cylinder, and it would come out of the one speaker on the front of the box, or wired to one speaker. And so we didn't need separation and channels, we just needed the sound to come out, and it was magical. The sound was reproduced anyway. And so for a very long time, up until about the late 50s, most of us were listening to music in a mono situation. So the music was basically just coming through one speaker, all right, reaching your ears at one point. About 1932, an English engineer from EMI, now I've got to find I wrote his name down. Where is it? Alan Blumenauer. I'm sorry if I've Blumelian. I am butchering the poor man's name. He basically was at the cinema with his wife, watching a movie, and he would often get issues in the old days because there was only one speaker. It was mono, right? Or two speakers, but it was a mono mix. So the actor could be one side of the screen and the vocals were coming out the other. It was very disconcerting. And he thought he'd go about making it a bit more realistic. So he invented this system called the Blumenauer pair, which is basically two mics recording the sound off-center from each other, slightly off-centered, at the same time. So you could then, basically like Mono Deluxe, you could pump the two sounds through each channel, but at a slightly different rate, so that it tricked the ears to thinking that was coming first, this is second, and so on. He invented a type of microphone, a figure eight microphone, ribbon microphone, that basically pushed the sound in a different direction, because if you put two mics together at the same level, recording at the same time, you can cancel each other out. And this was happening a lot in early forms of stereo engineering. Even though the plucky Brits were the first to do it, the moneyed Americans were the ones at Bell Labs to actually record, to actually get it done first. So it was a wonderful race. There's a brilliant website. I'll link you to it about the history of stereo and the race between Bell Labs and EMI Abbey Road. Really, really fantastic, but like the space race, but in sound, right? And I grew up listening to mainly Mono Deluxe prints because we didn't have a big stereo system. In fact, the one in my lounge room was one of those ones that was basically a record deck in a cabinet. You used to slide the door open, the record deck was inside, a big spring arm, and then had one speaker at the side. So for a long time, because I wasn't allowed to use my brother's very nice Bang & Olufsen stereo system that he had spent a lot of money on, I wasn't allowed to go near it. Well, not while he was in anyway, of course I did sort of go and rifle his record collection and but each brother had a stereo in each of the rooms. I didn't get my first one until I was 16. It was my brother's old Sanyo Tower. God, it was terrible, absolutely shocking. My brother took the back off to see, because something was broken, and it had absolutely no innards. It was all just circuitry. It was just horrible when I think about what we used to pump out back then, right? Anyway, it doesn't matter. I still used it and I still loved it. He did end up blowing up though, I believe. He tried to put something into tape, trying to make the tape deck work, and he blew it up. He was learning to be an electrician at the time, so I'll let him have that. He also blew up my stage amp, my bass amp, trying to turn it from a valve to a solid state. Life goes on. It blew up right in the middle of a school performance. Anyway, that was a long time ago. Right. So, when I say school, I mean college. Sorry, not college. Still, when I was at art college. Now, so I've lost track of myself. Oh yes, that's right. So, we need to give more option to reproduce, because these people spent a lot of time, these engineers, their whole working lives to create perfect reproductive sound, and bands spend forever trying to get that sound. Now, stereo basically means hearing a different tonal range in each ear. Doesn't mean the same sound in each ear, which is where people get wrong, because that's basically mono deluxe. That's one sound reproduced in left and right. Basically just makes a big sound. Stereo, on the other hand, as I mentioned earlier in the first part, you know, you can play and do so many things. As I said, you can have Pete Townsend in one side, Keith Moon splashing around in and around you, moving around. You can have someone like Chris Squire from Yes, just moving all over the place. You could have the keys swirling left to right, the vocals forward or back. You can have it. Basically, there's so much that you can do, in good engineers, and I think there are some fantastic engineers still out there working. But because we are living in a world where things are digital now, there are a lot of would-be engineers out there, because without me being too sort of snobby, the computer does a lot for you. You still have to know a bit, but it's quite easy for you to be a bedroom warrior, right? You're not doing like Boston. You're not like that. You're not like making that album, you know, where he did it in his bedroom with mixing desks, and it's just a good example of beautifully mixed piece of music. Tubular Bells, another good one, all right? Big sound. I mean, I think the only thing now where you get beautifully mixed stereo is, you know, the audiophiles of this world, like Steven Wilson and classical music, because that's the way it has to be played, reproduced, right? And again, that's probably one of the reasons why stereo came about, because first recordings were classical music, and you need, with the beauty of orchestra when you're sitting there, is that the sound is coming at you at different levels and at different volumes and at different paces, and it surrounds you and creates a world of musical bliss, basically, or nightmarish, whatever you're trying to come across. And that's can't be reproduced in a mono, not really in a mono way, even though it was on 78s. But can you imagine trying to hear Holt's the Planets or the Ring Cycle or anything like that in a flat mono reproduction through a small speaker in your kitchen on a bench? You might as well have your radio on. Now, again, that's another reason why I think that stereo mixes are sort of have come to its end, because people used to listen to, and to some extent still do, listen to their radio, music through their radio. Low. Not many people have a stereo radio. Most of them are one-speakered in their kitchens, in their bedrooms, by the bed, in their bathrooms. They're not using two speakers. All right. I don't mean a woofer and subwoofer. I mean two distinct speakers. So is stereo dead? What do I think? I think stereo is alive and well with people of our age. I think we need to bring the prices down of stereo equipment. Make even the most baseline better than the sort of Sonos single speaker things that we have now. Make it more affordable for the young people. Make it more pocket friendly, and it will come back. I don't see people sitting in their lounge rooms or in their bedrooms in front of their speakers just like we do, or some of us, me. I don't see that for everyone, because not everyone's an audiophile. Not everyone is musical. They just want to consume it as entertainment. But give them the option to do it. That's what I say. Give them the reason. It's like books. You know, I'm not a big reader. I'm actually dyslexic, so I find reading a little bit hard. I can read, I just find it hard to do. And I can't do it with a Kindle or on my phone, even my laptop. I have to really hold a book, physically see the paper, and interact with the medium. This is why I think I'm the same with music. Now, this is how I feel we are going. I think we need to bring back, I don't think we need to fill the world with print media if it's going to, clog the planet. Digital world is good because it's storable in a very small space. i.e. the beauty of CDs. But actually being there with the medium and feeling that sound around you, I'd love you to experiment. If you've not done it before and you can get the opportunity to do it, listeners, to put away your omnidirectional Bluetooth water showerproof speaker that you've bought at your local audio store. Get 2 speakers, attach it to your amp if you've got an amp, right? And actually be there in that moment with it. I mean, obviously you know because you wear headphones, so you're going to get the headphone sound. I don't mean that. I mean just headphones off in that sound moment, in the wall of sound. Because where's it going from here? Of course, we now have quadraphonic and all those sort of 4 speakers, 6 speakers, 8 speakers, subwoofers, multi-directional. There's Dolby Atmos and Sonos sound, whatever. There's new soundscapes, which are wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And I think that may bring back the concept of sitting in a room and listening to music as it should be heard. But I feel that's going to be one of those things that, it's going to be price prohibitive to people, because they're not going to be able. They might buy the Dolby Atmos version of it on CD, but they won't be able to reproduce it. It's like having a Blu-ray but playing on a DVD player or whatever. It's not quite the same, is it? Like a 4K movie on a normal traditional TV, it loses the reason to have it. So, and it's too expensive for some people to have 4K TVs, right? So I think we need to try and bring the quality of the reproduction method up by bringing the cost down. It wouldn't be that hard. Yes, I know you can say, but Tony, you can just buy second-hand stuff. You can just buy second-hand stuff, and that's great. But not everyone has the ability to, or even the inclination to fix something if it breaks. So they're going to want something with a warranty. They want something that they can take out of the box, that they know is new, that they don't have to worry too much, easy to set up. That is got in an easy language. Actually comes with an instruction manual, for God's sake. What happened there? Why all of a sudden now, when you open up a piece of equipment, you either expect to know how to use it, or you have to go online to read the instructions? I've got a 1979 Marantz tape deck here. I've still got the instruction manual with it. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. I look at it, and it's another thing. It's the aesthetics of stereos. We've sort of lost the beauty of a stereo. I am also coming from this age group that I like VU meters, and I like big knobs, and I like stainless steel, and I like a solid system. I don't want micro. I want it big and chunky and attractive, not tiny and hidden away. That we sort of went towards. I bought the micro system. We've all bought micro systems. Never used them. I very rarely use them. In fact, I got the tape caught in my old one, and couldn't get it out because I had to take the whole system apart to get the tape out. It was a bit like a car stereo. You push the tape in, and it took it inside. Yeah. Anyway, I'm rambling. What I'm saying is stereo dead? Possibly. Can we save it? Yes. Should we save it? Absolutely. Because I just don't know whether my children, your grandchildren, even really know what stereo is and what it actually gives you, and how it makes the music so much better. We talk about stereo TVs, don't we? We talk about stereo cinema and quadraphonic sound and all that stuff, but why aren't we doing that with our music reproduction? It should be just standard. I don't remember the last time I saw a stereo unit sold in any shop that came with 2 speakers separately that you attach to an amplifier. I can't remember. I really can't. Oh, 1 second. Stupid bloody laptop. Every time I set this to go, not to go to sleep after an hour, it seems to go to sleep because I've been fiddling around with the laptop. Anyway, that's me this week. Not a particularly overly long one. I just wanted to sort of talk to you about my thoughts on stereo. I haven't repeated myself too much. If you're going to go there and really want to give it a listen, you do have a nice stereo system, I want to think, what's he talking about? What should I listen to? Genuinely, anything from sort of 1960 through about 1978, 1980, around that period, is where I'd hit, and I'd go the big hitters, because that's where you're going to really feel it, right? The Beatles, The Who, Deep Purple, any of the prog stuff, particular prog stuff. I mean, not my thing, but Dark Side of the Moon's stereo mix is exemplary. If you want to put on an album that really does take you on a journey through the left and right sides of your head. Sounds like an album, doesn't it? Takes you on a journey audibly, and gives you a reason to think, make you think, and not just go, oh, okay, I'm just listening to music. Makes you go, oh, I heard this there, and I heard that there. Listen, every time I replay Tommy Now, my vinyl copy that I've got, that's the new stereo mix, the original mix of the stereo, I hear something different. I hear a chiming hi-hat. I hear a strum of a guitar. I hear John's bass do something there. I feel that I'm being really treated to an absolute feast of musicality. And I think, there is a place for straight balls to the wall rock and roll. Punk and heavy metal does have that. Not all heavy metal, some heavy metal like Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and things like that are nuanced, but no one's sitting down and listening to Gorgoth for the stereo mix, right? They're just not. Put that aside. But if we're going to listen to music that's got clarity and definition and movement and texture and depth and colour and separation and feel and all those lovely fidgy-widgy words, then go and grab stuff like I said, the White Album, Sgt. Pepper, The Who, Quadrophenia, Close to the Edge, Selling England by the Pound, In Rock. These albums where they spent, and if you want an 80s album that was the pinnacle of that, then you have to get your hands on Deep Purple's Hysteria. At that time, one of the most expensive albums ever made. And again, an absolute example. Not my favourite album. I find it a bit too Americana for me. But unbelievably, for the medium, so textured. Boston's first album. Boston's another one to listen to. Any Steven Wilson album. Any of those. Jethro Tull. All that stuff. When stereo meant stereo, when sound meant something, it wasn't just packaging to put on a phone to get you from home to the office and back, right? To fill the void in your head. There is a space for that. As I said, I do fill the void on every moment I can, but it's just the way that I keep myself sane. Do my best. So guys, that's me rambled. That's me over for the week. I'd love to know what you think. What's your theories? Do you still listen to your stereo the way that I listen to mine? Do you still appreciate the way that these things are mixed? Are there albums that have come out recently that are beautifully stereo mixed that I've missed? Is there pop music that is beautifully mixed that has nuance that I'm also missing? Again, I can't listen to everything all the time, but I'd love to know what you think. Anyway, bye for now, guys. Keep real, keep rocking, keep listening. Bye now.